Okay, so welcome. I am delighted you're here. I'm Helen Graves, instructional designer with College of the Canyons, and today we're going to talk about HTML basics demystified. You may want to open up a page in one of your sandbox shells and actually try out some of the things that I'm demonstrating, or you may prefer to just watch for now and save your hands-on practice for later. I'll leave it totally up to you. So let's dive in. A little background. People, and that includes our students, don't pay attention to boring things. So we instructors need to be intentional about making the content and design of our courses as engaging as we can. And one of the ways to be intentional is with the visual design of your content. Good course design calls for using a variety of media to present your content and to facilitate student learning. So that means augmenting text with images, graphics, video, audio, etc. Here's an example of a Canvas page with some layout effects in a visually appealing way. You can see there's a background to the section heading. The text and the image are next to each other. The text kind of wraps around the image. There's a call out box to highlight really important information. There's a page border at the bottom. So you're probably thinking, looks great, Helen, but how do I add the nifty banners and the horizontal lines and the call out boxes and the white space and all of that? All it takes is just a skosh of HTML know-how. So that's what we're going to do today. Because with a little bit of explanation, HTML isn't as mysterious or difficult as it may seem. If all of this is brand new to you, it's going to be a lot of information. I will not lie, but don't worry about remembering everything that I'm saying. Just take in what you can and know that you can come back to the recording to watch again at your own pace. So I want to start with some very foundational details. Code is very logical and very orderly. Once you know how a piece of code is structured, it's pretty easy to use it with confidence. And we're not going to go into way difficult stuff. I'm just going to be showing you basics. It's important to remember that each line of code always has an opening and a closing tag, as it's referred to, enclosed within the greater than, less than symbols. They're usually referred to as carets in this context, C-A-R-E-T. And so here, this is an example of what would be paragraph text with the opening P tag, standing for paragraph, and the closing P tag. And you can see the only difference is the closing tag has the horizontal slash in front of it. So let's go into the Canvas editor, and I'm going to show you what we're doing. If you're trying this at home, I will be sharing the little snippets of code that I'm using in chat if you want to try the things that I'm showing. And again, if you just want to watch for now, perfectly fine. You can always try the experimentation later. So you can see on this page, I have a couple of images, and I've got that heading with the colored background. So I'm going to open up the rich content editor. And then I'm going to, down here below the edit field, I'm going to toggle into the HTML editor. And you can see the little symbol is the open close tag symbols. And when I hover over it, it's probably too small for you to see, but on your screen, you'll see it says click for the HTML editor. So when I click that, it takes me into the HTML code. You can see at the very top, let me make this a little bigger for you. It says H2, which stands for a heading. And then it's got the close H2 tag. Then we've got a paragraph tag. And down at the end, we've got the close paragraph tag. So each piece of content is chunked within some set of tags. Everything within the opening and closing is referred to as a line of code, even if it's actually longer than a single line of text. So this P tag, which actually is an image, and I'll show you that in a minute, or this one right below where it's talking about George, it looks like it's 4 lines of code, but it's really thought of as a single line of code because it's one paragraph that would be treated as a distinct piece of content within the HTML code. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense.
Yeah.
The code elements within a tag are labeled. So for example, if I go down to that second heading that had the colored background, and I'll isolate it so you can see it a little better. You see it still starts with the H2, but then after it, it has a bunch of information. So right here is where it's indicating the background color. And then over here with padding is where it's indicating the amount of space between the edge of the background color and the text. What else do I want to say about that right now? Two things. One, color in HTML is always indicated with a 6-digit hexadecimal code like this. And it always starts with a pound symbol. Padding is the space around content that is inside the border of an element. So this padding, as I said, is indicating that there is space between the edge of the border color and the text. Padding is typically written in directionals, and it always starts with the top and goes clockwise. So in this case, it's saying 0 pixels, which is the amount of space in a HTML environment, 0 pixels for the top, 0 pixels for the right, if we're going around clockwise, 0 pixels for the bottom, 10 pixels for the left. And in this case, you could also write it, I'll just show you a little trick. I could write it padding hyphen left colon 10 pixels. And then the assumption would be the other 3 directions are 0. I don't have to write them if I'm indicating a specific directional. But some people prefer to do all 4 for them. Or if you have, you want 10 at the top and 10 at the bottom, but 0 on the sides, you'd want to write all 4. So there's different reasons why you might use the 4 directionals or the simple indicator. Margins, as opposed to padding, generate space around the outside of the element. So here we've got padding left, and I'm going to remind you what it looks like. If I scroll down, you can see the border is right up at the left edge, and then there's a little bit of space, 10 pixels, in fact, between the edge of the border and the start of the text. If I go back into the code and be aware that Canvas, even though I put those spaces in there, as soon as I get out of the code, it gets rid of the spaces. It's a little frustrating, but that's the way it is. So if I change if I add a margin left, and let's make it big so you can really see it, 25 pixels. Now we're going to go back, and you can now see the margin is outside the border element and is moving it left or right or whatever. So margins and padding kind of do the same thing, but different in a sense, if that makes sense. One is inside the element, the other is outside the element. Okay, code is pretty straightforward if you know what you're looking at. It is very strict in its syntax, meaning you need to make sure if there is an equal sign or a quotation mark or a hyphen or a semicolon or a space, all of those things matter. Without them, the code isn't going to render properly on the page. So you're going to want to learn to pay careful attention as you're adding code and playing around with it to make sure those dashes and semicolons and spaces or whatever are included and are in the right places. At the beginning, it definitely feels overwhelming. As you play around with it, it starts to get more comfortable and feel more normal. So just know that, yes, right now your brain is probably exploding. And once you start playing with it, it's going to be a little bit easier. I've been doing this for a number of years. And so it feels, I'm not an expert at code at all, but I can do the basics with ease. And I know you will be able to as well. So the first thing I want to start with is what's called a block quote. And you can follow along on your practice page if you like. This one is as simple as replacing the P tag with the word block quote, all one word. And then I have to go to the end of that line of code, even though it's actually 4 lines in my case, but it's the end of that, what was that paragraph. And I'm going to leave the / and I'm again going to write block quote. So I have my open block quote tag and I have the close block quote tag. And then when I go back and look at it, you can see it just adds this nifty little vertical line that kind of sets it apart from the rest of the text. So it's a way to add emphasis. It's also, of course, good if you actually have a quote that you want to include on a page, you know, a lengthy quote. So that's one very simple thing to do. I'm going to show you a couple more things and then I'll check in for questions. The next thing we're going to try is a horizontal rule or a line. Bless Canvas's little heart, they have added the ability to insert horizontal rules into the new rich content editor. So to do just a basic horizontal rule, you go into insert and the very last option is horizontal rule. And yay, there's my lovely little horizontal rule. But there are times when that unobtrusive gray line just isn't good enough for me. I want something bolder. If that's the case, I have to go in and alter the code a little bit. So the thing to know about horizontal rules, it looks different. And that's because there's no text involved. So it doesn't need to enclose text with an open tag and a close tag. So in the case of a horizontal rule, there's just a single tag that has the HR indicator, which stands for horizontal rule. And then if there are any parameters like color or size or whatever, which I'll show you in a minute, those would come next. And then the close /. So horizontal rules are just a single tag. So to make this one fancier, I'm going to add what's called a style parameter. And I'll put it in chat for you. And what I'm going to do, I have to make sure my HR identifier is separated by a space. So I'm going to leave that space after it. I'm going to paste my style parameter, which tells me, in this case, it calls it a border. It doesn't use the word line, but it uses border, 5 pixels in width, and the color is a solid black. And you can now see it looks like that. Instead of that thin little gray line, I now have a big fat black line. Something you may be wondering, I told you a moment ago that hexadecimal code is always 6 digits. There's an exception, naturally. If the hexadecimal code for a color, all 6 digits are the same. And in this case, the 6 digits for black is 000000. So I can abbreviate it with just 3 zeros. And the code knows that that means everything else is a 0 as well.
Okay.
If you wanted to do, just as an example, FFF, that's the code for white. So now I don't see anything where the line is. DDD, and again, remember, it technically is 6 Ds, but we're abbreviating because all 6 digits are the same. D is the code, the short code for gray. So you don't need to remember that necessarily. I just wanted you to understand why you were seeing 3 digits instead of 6 digits. You don't have to worry about getting that fancy. Then I can change the pixels. If I don't want it that fat, I can use smaller pixels. If I want it even fatter, I can increase the pixels to whatever size I want to. So you can experiment a bit with that. And then I'm going to put in a different color just so you can see a hexadecimal color. I'm being very careful to make sure I leave the pound sign because that's part of the code. And then I'm going to put in an actual 6-digit color. That's a lovely little aqua or teal color. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
So you could play around with separators on your pages by using horizontal rules. And again, you could use the standard gray one, but if you want to get fancy, now you've got a way to do that. Okay.
Ellen, can I ask you a question real quick?
Yes,
Your pixels, how many pixels is that one right there for that size? Is that
this is 5.
okay? Okay, I wasn't sure if you changed that. Thanks.
I didn't yet. And if let's make it 15. Oh, and that one, okay. So you recall the tag actually said border, and that's how I was taught to do these horizontal lines. But apparently, if you get really fat, it actually becomes a border. So that little white line would be what's inside the border. So in this case, we wouldn't want to get too fat with our pixels because then it's not going to look necessarily like a horizontal line. Does that make sense?
You would use a banner instead, maybe with no
You could
text?
use a banner or just make sure. I mean, I personally wouldn't necessarily need something this fat. So I just make sure I'm staying under the threshold of when that line appears.
I have a question for you about the colors. When you want a specific color and you don't know what the...
I'm going to show you.
Okay,
I've got a
thank you.
resource for you because
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
there's thousands of, I mean, every shade available to you has a hexadecimal code. So I'll show you how to get there.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm going to go back and make that 5 again because that little white line will bug me. Okay, so Adina, did that answer enough of what you were looking to find out?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. So the next thing I want to show you is how to wrap text around an image. So this image of George is currently inserted in a format that's called inline, meaning the image is here and then below it is the text. But it seems like a lot of wasted white space to me. I really would prefer that the text and the image be next to each other. So the way to do that is to select the image by putting your cursor on it, coming up to the align option in the rich content editor. And actually, let me make this a little bigger. And hopefully you guys have figured out if something isn't showing, click the 3 little dots and it'll be in the rest of it. It just means that the width of your screen isn't wide enough to show the entire line. So I've got my image selected. I'm going to come to the align option. And if you hover your mouse over it, if you're not sure which icon it is, hover your mouse and it'll tell you align. From the drop down, I'm going to select left align. Woo! My text immediately jumps up next to the image. So the image is now floating next to the text. However, I don't like that the text and the image are butt up against each other. So there's a way to deal with that. I'm going to go into the code. I'm going to find my image. Let me isolate it here so you can see it a little more easily. Image code always starts with IMG. And I know it's the first image on the page, so I know this code is the image that I'm looking for. It already has the style tag with float left. And what that means is the image is now floating to the left of the text. But I want that space between it. I want padding between the image and the text. So after the float left, semicolon, and a semicolon essentially is like the ending punctuation for a little parameter. So I've got my float left and I want to close that within the entire parameter. So I put a semicolon. So then space, padding, hyphen, left, colon, space. I generally use 10 pixels after an image. Some people prefer 5, some people prefer 15. You can experiment and figure out what you like. So 10 px, px stands for pixels. And then again, that semicolon to signal to the code, that's the end of my padding parameter. When I go back and look, whoops, what did I do wrong? Oh, I know, silly Helen. The image is on the left, so my padding has to be on the right because it's between the image and the text.
Okay.
Now you're going to see
There.
I have that nice little space between the padding, between the image and the text. If I wanted to reverse it, so if I wanted the image over on the right-hand side, I would up here, when I've highlighted the image, I would simply click the right align, And then my padding, excuse me, would be left because I would want my text to the left of between the image and the padding. So you can reverse it if you want. I just, am showing you padding left, excuse me, float left, padding right between the image and the text. Question. Yes, go ahead, Lee.
How about that's not really padding underneath his photograph, and that would bug me to have that much space underneath between George and the last line of text.
Got it. It isn't padding, and I think it's because just the way these spaces in between the lines of text in Canvas, the default space between the paragraph lines made it so that it was just enough that line didn't go under it. So you can adjust the size of the image. But also keep in mind, don't stress out too much about that, because I'm seeing it on this desktop. My students may be looking at it on a phone or on a iPad or something that has a different width. So don't stress too much about making it perfect for your device, because on their device, it's going to have a different structure, if that makes sense.
And it might not look like what you want, so you can't control that.
Well, it depends. I mean, to a certain degree, yes, you are controlling it. So you've got your padding left, but you're not controlling how long the line of text is going to be. Because if my screen size were smaller, you can see the amount of text is going to change. And so that's what I'm saying, don't stress about, if that makes sense.
Right. The designer part of me is.
Yeah. Yeah. So just learn what are the things you can control and worry about, and the other, it just is what it is.
Thank you.
I'm so glad I'm not the only one, because yes, that would have bugged me, that spacing and then exactly what you're talking about. I'm so glad. Thank you for making me feel normal. Perfect.
Sure.
Helen, I have a question, and maybe you already answered what this was. When you switch back into
the code?
Yes, into the code. Line 3, where it says and then span. What does the span stand for? The image one. But.
Yeah, don't worry. You're not going to need to worry about a span. Canvas put this in automatically. It wasn't anything I did. It basically means within the paragraph tag, this is a special isolated piece of it. So the image is within a span. If I had text also within that paragraph, it could be outside of the span. Let me think of a way a span is like, I have different directions for this part of the code. So within the span, I could have a different color, for example, or a different alignment.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Okay.
So the whole paragraph might be left aligned, and I'm just making this up as an example, but the paragraph might be left aligned, but within the span, I've got right align, or the text is a different color or whatever.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Perfect.
But you don't need to worry about it. I'm not going to show you anything where you have to worry about span.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, but it's a good question, because it's like, what do all these things mean?
Yeah.
And as I said, I'm not officially trained. So somebody who really knows HTML could probably give you a better explanation of what span means, but that's the way I have come to interpret it.
It's probably why you're a better teacher to us.
Well,
because you know
I'm
how
certainly
to
not using jargon.
You know how to talk to us properly.
So remember, the code is very persnickety. So when you're doing things like adding padding and all of that, you want to make sure that you're getting your semicolons, you're getting the spaces, you're keeping it all within the quotation marks. You notice the style opens with a quotation, closes with a quotation. So just kind of start becoming aware of those little nuances, because they're going to make a difference. And if something isn't rendering properly, so let's say I forget my semicolon. So I've got everything float left, padding right, 10 pixels. And then I come here and it's not working. And I'm like, wait, I know I did it. I'm going to go back and look really, really carefully. Now, see, it also does that sometimes. If you don't write code correctly, sometimes it will delete it because it's not the appropriate command. So it just ignores it. And in ignoring it, it just gets rid of it. It doesn't want that gobbledygook in your code. So that would clue into me, uh-oh, I wrote my padding code wrong. So now I'm going to go in and try again and make sure I'm really careful about what I'm putting in. So yeah, I'll stop with that.
Oh,
Okay.
Great.
Now, suppose you want a border around the image. And actually, let me put the padding back in. I need to show you something. Padding, right, colon, space, 10px, semicolon. All right, so now we want a border around the image. And well, I'm just going to show you this and I'll put it in chat if you're following along. I would, in the style parameter, I would just put my cursor at the end of what I've already got so far, add a space, paste my border parameter. And you can now see I've got a nice red border around that. But look at this, what's
Padding.
happening here? This is where knowing the difference between padding and margins makes a difference, because I don't want padding between my border and the image. I want a margin between my border and the text. So I would have to go in and sort of adjust this so that instead of saying padding right, it says margin right.
Okay.
You only need to worry about that if you're putting a border around the image. If you saw when I didn't have the border, padding worked just fine. It was only when I got the border in there that it had that white space around the right side of the image. But that's where it pays to why I've explained to you the difference between padding and margin, because sometimes it makes a difference which command you're using. You'll also see I was able to, with the color, simply put solid red. I didn't even have to worry about a hexadecimal. There are certain colors, and I don't know the whole list, but let's just try other colors and see. So a lot of, I guess we'd call them traditional color names, will work just as the word itself. So you can experiment and see. Let's see if silver works. I bet it won't, but it might. No. Oh yeah. So well, we got kind of a grayish. Anyhow, if you try a fancy color like burnt umber or something, it's not going to work. You'd have to find the hexadecimal code. But if you want to be just very simple, you can just type in solid and whatever the color is, red, blue, yellow, gold, green, and do it that way. You can also, of course, do the hexadecimal, and let me show you another one. So I'm going to leave the solid, and I'm going to put a 6-digit hexadecimal code. And it's a lighter shade of that same aqua color. And you can, of course, if I want a thicker border, I could do 7 pixels, or I could do 2 pixels. Just know that if you're doing a border color and you only have, for example, 1 pixel, it's not going to show very well. So you might want to, if you want the color to be part of the visual experience, just know that you'll probably need at least 2 pixels for it to really register for somebody visually. I often just have a black border because it just looks cleaner against the white background. And so I just leave it at 1 pixel. But if I'd have a colored border, I might want it a little bigger. Okay, let me show you the heading background and then I'll stop again for questions. So here we've got this section heading, but we added a background to it just for visual interest. So in order to get that, let me isolate it for you again. It was the H2. So I had my regular heading and I marked it as an H2. Then I came into the code and I added a style parameter where I said background, and it knows that means background color. And I gave it a 6-digit hexadecimal. I'm going to get rid of the margin because I don't really want it to have that white space after it. So that's all I did. The heading won't have, just like this top, well, now it does. It won't come with a style parameter. So if you're beginning this, you need to make sure you're adding the entire style equals quotation mark, background, blah, blah, blah. This second part, and here's a good answer to your question, I think it was Adina or maybe Lucia, about span. So because the default text in Canvas is black, and black text is not going to have enough contrast for accessibility against this blue background, I had to go in and make my text white. And that's what the span is. It's saying this little part of the code, not all of it, but this piece of it is white. And that's the FFFFF. So it's saying just Andy Garcia is the white color. Everything else is the standard. So that's one instance when span would come into play. But I didn't have to put in the span. All I did out here was highlight the text, come up here to the color, make it white. And in the code, Canvas took care of the span and all of that kind of stuff.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, so a lot of things Canvas will do when you're in the rich content editor, and then when you're here, you just know what you're looking at. So question about what we've covered so far. I know it's a lot, so just, let it soak in.
Hi, Ellen.
Yes,
The codes.
yes.
Where do I find the codes, or
I
because
have
they
a
are pretty
cheat sheet.
specific.
Yeah, excellent question. I have a cheat sheet. So at the end, after I've
Thank you.
got two more things I want to show you, and then I will give you some resources like how to find hexadecimal colors. I have a cheat sheet with all the different code. And in fact, it has more than what I've shown you, but you'll be able to find the things and start playing around. So I've got you covered.
Thank you so much.
Great.
I just didn't want to give it to you ahead of time so that you're looking at it thinking, oh my goodness. So I'll give it to you after you feel a little more confident with the code.
Thanks.
Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is, and I'm not going to save any of that, a responsive banner. So I've got a banner, but watch what happens if my student's page is a different size than mine. It gets cut off, and I don't like that. Easy way to fix it. I go into the editor. In the code, it's the very top thing because my banner is at the top of the page, so I don't have to look for it. I see my image, and I'm going to add in. Okay, actually, I'm going to do, well, there's two ways to do it. One is if I click it and make it a certain size, now you can see there is a width and a height command in there. When I first enter it, Canvas doesn't include that because it just kind of knows it. But if I change the size of it a little bit, then I've got this. And what I would do is, I don't need to worry about the height. So you can either leave the height or get rid of it. I'm going to, instead of saying a set number of pixels, I'm going to say 100% for the width.
Okay.
And then when I go back here, it won't, well, let's see if it does. Yeah, so you can see it now adjusts itself depending on the size of the screen.
I like that.
The other way is if the width and everything wasn't there the way it hadn't been at the beginning, you can simply type in width equals quotation mark 100%, close quotation mark, and that's all. You don't need to worry about the height because it will just keep the, what do they call it when you keep the ratio? It'll keep the height and width ratio the same, so you don't need to worry about designating the height. Just say width 100%, and you could do 50% or 27%, you could do whatever percent you want. I just, for a banner, I like it to go all the way across the page. So I generally say 100%. So it's as simple as just setting the width at a percentage rather than a set number of pixels. Does that make sense? Okay, good. All right, next thing I want to show you, and this is where we're going to get a little fancy, but I know you're ready for it. The text boxes. I think I'm a very visual person, and most people are. I mean, vision is big for human beings. So I like to use text boxes, not willy-nilly, but maybe one on a page or two if it's a really long page, to really draw attention to things that I want to make sure students are seeing, because your eye can't help but be drawn to that text box. So I wanted to show you a variety of text boxes because you might like a particular one. I tend to use the shadow one, but there might be times when the sidebar, whatever. So I wanted to show you these and show you how easy it is to play around with them. All of these styles are going to be on that cheat sheet I give you. And I've called them these names. So I refer to this as the solid one. So it'll have the HTML code. If you want a solid, you'll just copy it, or the double border or whatever. So I'm going to go in here. Oh, and one thing, when I show you the code for the shadow box and also the sidebar, it's actually two boxes. There's the background box, which is that solid blue. And then on top of it is another white box that has the blue border and the text in it. So you're actually going to see two sets of code because there's two things that are working together, one on top of the other, to create the visual impact of a shadow. Okay, so div is something new. We haven't talked about it before. It's similar to the idea of span. It's basically saying, here's a special command for this little thing. And so all of these boxes are using a div tag. Don't worry too much about it. Just know that's what the div is, and your boxes are going to have div tags, not paragraph or anything like that. Most of it you can ignore. You're not going to need to worry about the class, the border. What you're going to want to be able to change is the color, the background color. So for example, let's say, if you recall, it had a green background. I'm going to change this one to be this. And then what I did in the code was I put text goes here. So if you're in the, and now you can see I changed the background of it, everything else is the same. So I can either change the text here, or if I'm in the code and I feel like pasting my text, I can do it from here as well. But up here in the div is where you've got your color and background. Then down here in this paragraph is where the text, and then it has the closed div, and that's the end of that box. Same thing with the double border. I've got my style with a double color, and so I could change this. I've got padding. You can experiment with the padding and see what happens if you want to. If I make this 50, I don't even know what it's going to do, but we'll see what it does. And then width. So let's say I've got not a lot of text. So instead of 65, which might mean it's got just a big white box with, just 5 words in it, maybe I want to make it 45 width. And you can, well, I don't know if you remember how wide it was before, but the edges were more like out around here on either side. So you can change. So what I'm trying to get at is it looks more difficult than it is to deal with, but really all you need to worry about is the color, perhaps the width, and the text that's in it. You're not going to need to worry about a lot of the stuff that's there. The shadow box, let's say I want to make, I think it's this one. I never remember which is the front and which is the back. So I've changed the background color in this div. This div, I haven't touched anything. I'm going to leave it. Actually, let me change. No, I'll leave it. And then when I go back, okay, so the top one apparently is the background color because I changed it to gray, and you can now see the shadow is a gray color. If I wanted to do that backwards, I could say 30759B, and then change this color to be my gray. And you can now see my background is that blue and my little gray border is on the text one. Okay. I feel like I'm throwing too much at you now all of a sudden, but so let me stop and see what questions do you have, or what is there anything you want me to play with so you can see what happens? Or are you just stunned into silence because it's been too much information?
For me, it's been great. I think you're clearing up a lot of things that I always wondered how it was done.
Good,
Um,
excellent.
Yeah,
I
same
guess
for
on
me.
your-
No, this is good.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Adina. Your cheat sheet will have these. We could just insert one of these text boxes and then we can look at the code that it,
Yes,
okay,
yes.
great. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Adina, were you going to say something? Okay,
Oh, I thought I was muted. No, this has been great.
good.
This has been, I've always wondered with the shadow one. I wasn't really sure how to do that one. And the div was what was throwing me off every single time.
Yeah, yeah.
Helps.
Okay. So we're supposed to end now, and I have some tips and I want to share the resources. So I didn't get a chance to show you about columns.
Oh.
If you go to the page I was showing at the very beginning, the Design Thinking series, there is a, let me find it. Okay, this recording is one I did, I don't know, sometime last spring or whenever. I had a bit more time, and so I did show how to do columns. So if you're interested in doing columns, watch the recording. And won't get there. Okay, so what I want to tell you is Canvas updated the HTML editor so that it does have those line numbers, but they never intended for Canvas to actually be an HTML code editor. So it doesn't have a lot of the bells and whistles that a full-on code editor would have. So you just kind of have to get used to the way it is. One little trick I've used, because it can be hard to find your way around this because it all is smashed together and I may not know what line a particular thing is. So what I will often do is, so let's say I want to find my shadow box. I will put my cursor at the beginning or the end of wherever I want to be working, and I'll put in a couple of empty line spaces so that when I go into the code, I can very quickly see, oh, there's my empty line spaces. Here's my shadow box. Now I know exactly where I want to go to work on it. And then I can just delete the empty line spaces when I'm done working. Does that make sense?
That's a good tip.
Okay.
That is a good tip.
Yeah, I learned that the hard because it's like, oh my God. So I use that all the time. The other thing to keep in mind is you will make mistakes. And there are times when the mistake will be so horrific that the entire page is irredeemably ruined. I speak from experience here, but here's what I'm going to suggest. It's always best to make a copy of whatever it is you're going to work on in Canvas before you start playing with the code.
Okay.
So if you've got a discussion and you want to add something fancy to it, make a duplicate of the discussion first, play around with it, get it the way you want it to be, and then either make that the live discussion or copy the code onto the existing discussion. Here's a trick though with pages. You may not be aware there is something from the 3-dot menu called View Page History. And when I click it, it shows me up to 25 previous versions of the page. So if I had been working on this and I totally messed it up and I wanted to start over, I could open up the page history and go back to an earlier version before I'd messed it up and start from there. Page history is not available on discussions, quizzes, or assignments. It's only available on pages. So that's why I'm saying if you're working on a discussion, assignment, or quiz, make a duplicate of it and play with that one. And then you won't end up in tears the way I have at times.
Yeah, I definitely learned that the hard way. I thought
Yes.
every page and I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh. Well,
By the way,
I never.
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I didn't know they had that. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. Another good tip.
It's really nice. I use it all the time. Tabs are another nice feature. Oh, here's what columns look like. And we didn't have time to go into that, so don't worry about it. But tabs is another nice feature for a page design where they don't have to scroll. It's semi-advanced and kind of lengthy to explain. So we have a separate tutorial that's just focused on tabs. I'm going to be doing that on Wednesday, November 17th at 9 o'clock. So if you want to come, I will be recording it, so you can also watch the recording. Okay, now I'm going to do two things. I'm going to show you this in case you want to take a screenshot of these, and then I'm going to show you what each of those resources is about. And I can also put them in chat. So whatever way you want to do to get to these, I know some people have said, oh, I like to take a screenshot. So I wanted to show you this if you want to take a screenshot of it. And now let me show you what they are. So here's the cheat sheet. And as you can see, it's got more than what we talked about, but it also has things that we talked about, like the shadow box and the sidebar, whatever. And what I've done is highlighted in yellow the things you're probably going to want to adjust. So those are the things that you would need to look at. Everything else you don't have to worry about. What's really cool with horizontal rules, I didn't show you this, but let me show you. I'm going to do this. Actually, no, I only need this part. I'll put it up here. Now, because it's code, I have to go into the code in order to paste it. If I paste it in the rich content editor, that it's just going to show up as text of that line of code. It's not going to actually render. But you'll figure that out if you do it one time. You'll go, oh, yeah. So we can do dotted lines. We can do dashed lines. There's all kinds of stuff. So it's really fun to play around with. So again, let me put this in chat if you want to open it up so you can bookmark it for later. This is the cheat sheet. The other thing, there's a ton of websites out there that will help you find hexadecimal codes. This is one I use a lot. It's just fairly simple to use. It gives you a slider. So if I want a green tone, I can do that. And then I can move the magic circle to find the exact color. And then it gives me the 6-digit hexadecimal code right there. So this is just a simple one to use. I'm going to put this in the hexadecimal code in the chat for you so you can open it up and then bookmark it for later. This is one I like to use because it helps me if I want to have a theme of more than one color. So maybe I want, well, anyhow, I could start with a hexadecimal color and let's just make up, well, I've got my sliders. So I can say I want to start with that color and then I can choose a harmony or I can find monochromatic. So it's a way of finding complementary colors if I'm not a design person and I'm kind of lazy. Again, there's a ton of these out there, so you can just search for complement color calculator or something like that and find a tool you like. But just so you know, these kinds of things are out there to play around with. The last thing I'll show you is contrast is an issue when you're working with text and color for accessibility. And so like with the border where I had the Andy Garcia and the background color, I had to make sure my text had sufficient contrast. If you're just using a border around an image or you're just using a horizontal rule, it doesn't really matter because those are not content pieces that a student would need to be able to see. So you don't have to worry about contrast there. But the WebAIM contrast checker is a tool to use. So here it'll show me what my foreground color is. And in this case, let's say it's, I think 0 is white. I never remember white and black. Nope, 0 is black. So F must be white.
SFF, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So my foreground color, my text is white. So here it's telling me, okay, your background color is not sufficient. So I can use the slider until I get to where it'll show me pass. And then I know, okay, if my text color is this, my background color can be that. And you can do it in other shades. So if I had a blue in here, and I don't know what a blue one would be. Oh, let me see. Okay, so why are you not? Okay, I'm going to click in there. So it passes with this one, but we really want the AAA pass. So I would need to make it darker until I get the full green. Then I would know this blue is sufficient contrast against the white text, so I can grab this hexadecimal code for my background. Did I say that in a way that makes sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. So this will come in very handy for you as a simple way to check the, I'll call it contrast checker.
That is so cool. I didn't even know we had that.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah,
this-
WebAIM is a great resource. It's an organization for accessibility stuff, and they have a lot of really nice things. This is one of my favorite. Okay, I've taken you over time, so let me just check in. Any last minute questions?
I have one, but it
Yes.
wasn't on anything you covered just yet. I know you're doing tabs later,
Yeah.
and unfortunately I teach, so I'm gonna have to figure out where your recordings are.
Let me put that in chat again.
Okay.
There is a design thinking webpage on the College of the Canyons website, and that's where they're storing all of the archived recordings.
Oh,
And so they'll put the tabbed ones there. Unfortunately, it's kind of a long page to scroll, but it'll be
Oh,
there
that's-
after. So you'll be able
oh,
to
that's
find it.
okay. Okay, is that, that's this last one?
Yes, where it's got the canyons.edu and then a big long URL.
A quick question though, have you found that when you're importing, or I guess copying one Canvas shell, you know, to the next semester and whatnot, have you noticed specifically tabs getting messed up or changing? Semester?
I have not, unless you are after you mean in the import itself and you haven't done anything else to the page? I haven't noticed that.
Okay, because I just noticed it. And again, I really wish I could attend your tabs one, because I just kind of learned how to do it on my own, but I don't think I learned it. I don't think I did it the right way.
So real quickly,
something
and
with my code.
definitely you can watch and if you have questions, let me know, but tabs are a bunch of divs. And usually when tabs get messed up, it's because a div is missing or there's an extra div that somehow got added and shouldn't be there.
Okay,
so
that makes sense.
The thing to
I
know
messed
is
with that too
you've got an
much.
opening div that sets up the whole tab. Then you have a div for each individual fragment. So each tab section has a div, fragment 1, fragment 2, fragment 3, and a closed div. And then you have a final closed div because it has to close this original. So you want to make sure each individual fragment has an opening div and a closing div. And then you have, I don't know why this is in here, that shouldn't be there. Then you have the double div at the bottom. So it's got the close here, but then it has another. Why did you not delete? Oh, because I'm not in I'm in College of the Canyon, so it doesn't know I'm me. I'll go in and delete that. Anyhow, that may be what part of the issue is there's either a missing div or one too many divs.
I think so, because that's what I was mentioning before, that the divs always kind of threw me off, and
Yeah.
I bet you that's what it was.
Generally
And then even during the breaks, Helen, much like you did before, thank you so much for helping me. Whenever we did at the beginning of this semester, last semester, I can't remember during all this COVID stuff. Are you available outside to help with, like, you know, fixing the little things as we go along too?
I will talk with Joy and see if we can do a few more. When I've done the office hours, because I'm only part-time and they want to make sure, you know, when
Yeah.
I've done them, people have very rarely shown up and they don't like me sitting there for an hour with not doing anything. But I will ask her if maybe once a month or something. I don't know how they're publishing it, so I don't know how people are finding out. And that may be part of the problem, is people don't know. But you can always email me and I can try to do it in a, you know, an email or make a quick little video tutorial and send it back to you. I'm happy to do that.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Thank you so much. This has been so helpful. All these.
Good, I'm glad. So have fun with it. Just know you're going to start off small and do little things and then build your confidence and get better. And just know you're going to make mistakes. Don't get mad at yourself for making mistakes. That's just the nature of the beast. So I hope you have fun with your code, and I'm glad you joined us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This was fantastic.
I'm glad to hear it. Have fun and let me know how it goes.
This was
Thank you,
awesome. I have
Helen.
one more question.
Yeah.
How can I find that haunted house background? That is fantastic.
Oh, I teach production design, and so I always change my background to be current, whatever award shows,